Hey everyone, Cory from Aquarium Co-op. Today we're going to talk about tips that will make your guppies just look awesome. So the first thing, what you feed. That is kind of one of the most important aspects, and a variety, you'll hear that a lot. That's true, but I think that doesn't get played out as well as it should. Finding very high quality and foods they will eat is very important. And so in this clip here, you'll see it's all the tiny magic nano feed. It hovers mid-water. The fry can eat it. The adults eat it. All that kind of stuff. But the thing I'll point out is smaller foods are better. And that's because they don't want to take a big old bite out of a giant steak. They want to get just little bites fed to them, and they want to do that all day long. So the more you can get it into bite-sized form, the better. Now the adults, they want something bigger, and you can go with a micro pellet or something like our community pellet there where you can see it eaten. And yes, you can mix in live foods and frozen foods and other dry foods. All of those can work, but making sure that you're keeping the food fresh and it's the right size and you feed multiple times a day goes really far to give them the nutrients to make more babies, look better, gain size, do all those things that you will see when you go, wow, those guppies look amazing. Why aren't mine looking like that? It's usually down to one of the simple things, and that is food, how much, how often, and what kind of quality. Live plants or decor plays a huge role in how your fish are going to look, right? So if you have a black guppy on a black background, that doesn't look very good. If you have a nice red one against a black background, that would look great. It'll really stand out, really pop. Well, the same thing happens when you have live plants or your decorations, whether it's rock or you've got a castle in there or whatever you're going to do. The colors of your fish you want to stand out versus the colors of the background. When you use live plants, you get lots of green going on, which is great because there's not that many green guppies, and almost everything will look good against that green. And getting that decor going will also do another benefit of letting the females hide out and the babies grow up and just in general enrich the environment and give all the fish a break and can separate out while also making them look good against it. The next important factor I would say would be the water parameters, and specifically the pH and the hardness of the water. In general, guppies want a pH above 7. I find they really put on good color between like 7.4 and 7.8, so if you can optimize for that. And then the hardness, that's how many minerals, how much calcium, magnesium, and just stuff is in the water. Now I'm lucky, I moved houses, and I'm actually on well water now, and the guppies love it, and they thrive in it. But when I didn't have that, I had to add them, and that might be Sequum Equilibrium, it might be Wonder Shells. For me, it was always some crushed coral, and even now I use some. Crushed coral will help buffer that pH and the KH. Make sure you rinse it really well. I just sprinkle it throughout the gravel like a pound per 10 gallons. That'll kind of keep you going for at least a year with the right pH, assuming you're doing appropriate water changes and things. And then I come in and I add the hardness minerals. And between those two, that will really get some good growth and some good colors going on those guppies. Another trick to make them look good is these guppies are going to want to breed. That's what they do. They give live birth, and they do that every 30 days. And that can be real hard on the fish. So you need to be able to rest them, and that's where that decor comes in, and then also kind of having the right mix. So you need more females than males, and when all that breeding's going on, you're going to run into females that are just tired out, and a tired out female gets chased. And when they're getting chased all the time, then you get ragged fins and you get stress colors and all of that. And so usually the bigger the colony gets, the less that's going on, unless you get a big imbalance going and you've got 3 males for every female you've got. That could be problematic. And so I would definitely try and get towards more females than males, even though the males are the good looking ones. We do want to set ourselves up for success. So when you are buying them, I recommend more females than males, and that is a ratio of 1 male to every 2 or 3 females. It's common to be able to buy what's called a trio. Sometimes you can get pairs. So when I'm buying fish and I'm shopping online or I'm in a store, I will buy 2 pairs or I will buy 1 trio. And if I'm really lucky and I'm with a breeder or something like that, I will ask, can I get 2 males, 4 females, also known as 2 trios? Those 2 males, they make sure that they're going to breed. They spar with each other. They're competing for the female's attention. And then you've got the 4 girls. Likely I'll make fry, and from there the colony will grow. and I will get lots of colors and lots of variation. And while we're talking about that mix, know that not all guppies breed true. So when they do raise up, you're going to get some, hey, that looks a little bit different. That's a little bit different of a pattern. That's a little bit different of the color. Or maybe it's not as big as the other one is. Or, oh, this is going on. And that's normal in guppies. So part of it is also just choosing the mix of fish. So when you go and you pick out at the store, or you're asking the breeder for certain traits, be selective there. And then when you're growing them up, remove fish that don't fit the traits that you like. Maybe it's a different color, maybe it's not as bright, maybe it's not as big, whatever it is, remove those, put them into maybe a quarantine tank, and then eventually take them to a store or pass them along to a friend, something like that. And so your colony keeps getting better and better, and your fish keep looking better and better. So another thing to think about while we're talking about how do they look is what strain do you pick and what type of tail do they have? And you want to be careful with water current. So if you've got a big hang-on back filter, a big cancer filter, and they've got a big tail, they might be getting worn out trying to swim against that current. They're going to eat more, they're going to be worn out, they're being chased. All of these things are happening, and usually the females don't have the big fin, so it's mostly the males we're talking about. So if you have big tails, they can actually get so big they can have a hard time getting off the ground. That's not a trait you want. But if they have a decent sized tail and the current is low, they should be able to hold it no problem, find food, and not burn too much energy. So I find sponge filters work really well, under gravel filters work well, canisters turn down really slow, hang-on backs turn down really low. All of those combined with your decor and everything to kind of slow down that water will help you raise guppies to bigger size with more color because they're not stressed out from being chased all the time or swimming against a current all the time. Next up, let's talk about disease. Guppies do carry disease. All fish carry disease. And what usually plagues guppies would be fungal infections and bacterial infections. And then also they'll have internal parasites like tapeworms. So I like to cure most of the outside stuff with salt. If you have a quarantine tank, that's an easy one at a tablespoon per gallon. Otherwise, I use a combo of Icex and erythromycin. That'll take care of fungal and bacterial, and I do that for about a week. And then internally, I do the Paracleanse or ProziPro. I like to use ProziPro as well. Both of those treatments, I basically let sit for 1 week and try and clean them out of parasites. Then I rest them for a couple weeks, and then I treat them again. And the reason I do that is the internal parasites will lay eggs. You have to wait for those to hatch, and then you have to treat again to kill those before they lay new eggs. And so you can't let them get mature. So you can't just do it once and then wait a few months and do it again. That won't do it. Once, wait 2 or 3 weeks, do it again. That'll get it. All right, so let's talk about tank mates. Now, we've already talked about how they carry big tails a lot of time. We talked about how they have 1 million babies. We talked about the food requirements and the space and the plants. So naturally, we're going to want fish to go with it that don't eat their babies or don't eat the plants or get too fast with the food. Like a rainbow fish will get all the food, or a barb would get all the food. And then you've got fish that just like to chase fish. So like these rosy barbs back here, they would chase those guppies, and that wouldn't be a good fit. I wouldn't put a betta with them because a lot of times they see the same color and they'll want to fight it. And so what I find works well could be something like shrimp, Corydoras, green neons, little rasboras, other livebearers sometimes, not all of them. Like I wouldn't put big giant swordtails, but maybe balloon mollies or something like that. The more peaceful the fish is, or the shrimp is, or the snail is, the better everybody's going to do. Now, if you're feeding high quality foods, the more fish you have, the more you have to feed, the more expensive it gets. So if your goal is really to raise these guppies and really get showstoppers, it's pretty much only guppies. And so a lot of times I think it looks best when you just have this big booming colony of guppies and then some shrimp along the bottom. The shrimp will kind of eat at their waist, they'll eat anything they miss and all of that, and the focus will be just all this activity in the guppies, and that's what I love. But you can mix them with things and just know that you won't get the best looking guppy out of that because it's forced to compete, it's forced to do all of these things, where when it's just guppies, it's you, the guppies, the food, the water. You can just dial everything into how do I make them look the absolute best and how do I raise the most fry. So I'm choosing the best daughters and sons to continue the lineage and just make them look even better. How long do they live? How long is that process? Well, temperature, and we'll get into that, but usually somewhere between 1 and 3 years, depending on genetics and the temperature and what you're feeding them and how many times they've had to breed. all of those things play a factor, but don't forget that, how old they are will also be how colorful and how big they are. So usually I find the sweet spot somewhere between like 16 months, more than a year, and then up to about that 2 years. Like that 4-month range, they really start looking good. And if you miss growing them, you don't really get that time back. So as you're raising these babies, feeding them well and often ensures they're going to get the proper growth and the proper color. You can go wrong with that and overfeed them or underfeed them, but usually people, I find, actually underfeed. We're so afraid of overfeeding that we underfeed, and we don't realize that the guppies want to eat all day long, and when they don't get that, and they're very energetic fish, they tend to suffer for it. All right, last thing, we're going to talk about temperature. Temperature can be critical. If you run it way too hot, their metabolism is racing. It means they want to eat all the time. They want to breed all the time. They're going to grow really fast, and they're going to die really fast. And so if you're running at 82 to 85, you might say, oh, my guppy's only living 18 months. And remember when we said, they don't even start looking good till 16 months. And good is relative. They started looking good earlier, but really in that prime, right? And so when you keep them at a lower temp, maybe 72 to 70, depending on the strain. Some strains can go pretty cool. Some have been raised only ever in hot water, and they start freaking out down around 73. But the cooler you keep them, now you might, I am getting 3 years out of it. But I would also caution you at the extremes at both ends, where they're going to tolerate it, and every strain is different, disease can set in. And so you want to run, I run all of my tanks in this building. I actually run them at 72 degrees, and I find that my fish do really well with that. Now, I've run them at all temperatures, and at the store they would be at 78, and they're hungrier, and you got to clean them and feed them more and do all of that. And even plants like it a little bit cooler, but depending on the tank mates you might have, that might dictate it a little bit. But I look for somewhere between 72 and 75 is real easy to maintain throughout the year using a heater, and that's where I like to set them.